everyone, welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're digging into something I think a lot of us can relate to, imposter syndrome.
Yeah, definitely.
That feeling you're not as competent as everyone thinks, like you're going to be found out. We're looking at some really interesting work by Matthias HETTL.
All
He's
right.
an international management consultant, and he's got some unique takes on imposter syndrome. And we're really going beyond just the surface level stuff, not just fake it till you make it.
It's much deeper than that.
Exactly. He digs into why people feel this way, what's going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I found super interesting is he talks about how imposter syndrome can actually lead people to sabotage their relationships,
Yeah.
which seems counterintuitive.
It is. It's like pushing people away before they can see your flaws.
It's like, oh, they're going to figure me out eventually, so.
Yeah, I'll do it first.
Exactly. So we're not just talking about feeling a little nervous starting a new job here.
No, not at all. This can have some serious impacts on your life and your health.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sybil really emphasizes that.
Yeah, and he goes on to say it can manifest physically, too.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Stress, problems sleeping, even high blood pressure.
Wow.
All from that constant worry, the pressure of being exposed.
It's like your body's on high alert all the time.
Exactly. It takes a real toll. And here's the thing that I find really fascinating. He talks about this cycle, right? People with imposter syndrome often overwork.
Oh, yeah. They're trying to compensate.
Exactly. They're trying to prove themselves, but it backfires.
Right, because the more they achieve,
The worse they feel.
yeah, it's like that finish line keeps moving.
Exactly. You're never enough.
Yeah.
And that's where I think HETTL's insights into the roots of imposter syndrome are so valuable.
Because if you understand where it comes from.
It's easier to address it.
So what does he say causes it? Nature, nurture?
It's a bit of both, actually. He says genetics play a part, maybe about a third.
Really?
Yeah, some people might be predisposed to those feelings of self-doubt. And then you've got the environmental factors, like upbringing, experiences, all that.
Exactly. And that makes up about 2/3. HETTL talks about this combination of low self-esteem and perfectionism.
Oh, that's a recipe for disaster right there.
Absolutely. You're constantly striving for this impossible standard, setting yourself up for feeling like a failure before you even begin. It can be really tough to break out of.
So how do we get out of that cycle? Because, it's one thing to say, okay, well, have good self-esteem and all that, but, how do you actually put that into practice?
Right.
What are some actionable steps people can take?
Well, HETTL has some really interesting ideas about that. One of the things that he talks about that really resonated with me is this idea of detaching from external validation.
Ooh, interesting.
So it's kind of like, those gold stars and the pats on the back. Those are all great,
Sure.
but they can't be the sole source of our self-worth.
Right.
Because what happens when those things go away?
Yeah. Or when you don't get them, which is inevitable, right?
Yeah.
You're not always going to get that validation from the outside world.
Exactly. So HETTL's point is that we have to cultivate that sense of worthiness internally.
Which is so much easier said than done.
Oh, for sure. But it is possible.
Mm.
And one of the key ways he talks about doing that is to start recognizing your inherent value as a person.
Okay.
And this is really about separating your worth from your accomplishments. So instead of thinking, oh, I'm worthy because I got this promotion,
Right.
you shift your mindset to, I'm worthy, period, and this promotion, that's just a bonus.
So it's almost like you're already enough.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And then the achievements, those are just icing on the cake. And it's interesting because HETTL points out that a lot of this comes down to changing the way we talk to ourselves.
Oh, that inner critic.
Exactly. That
Oh.
voice can be brutal.
The worst.
Right. It's like it's always there, ready to point out every little flaw. But what if, instead of listening to that voice, we started talking back to it?
Oh, I like that.
What if we started focusing on our strengths, our talents, all the good stuff that we often overlook?
Right, because we're so busy focusing on the negative.
Exactly. HETTL's point is that we need to become our own cheerleaders.
Love it.
Instead of listening to that inner critic, crank up the volume on our own personal hype squad. It's like we're so used to being our own worst critics.
Right. We would never talk to a friend the way we talk to ourselves sometimes.
Exactly. And HETTL talks about this idea of challenging our expectations, the ones we set for ourselves.
Yeah, like those impossible standards we hold ourselves to.
Exactly. Because the truth is, none of us are perfect. We're all a work in progress.
Absolutely. We all make mistakes. It's part of being human, right?
Right. And HETTL's point is that we need to learn to embrace those imperfections instead of letting them fuel our imposter syndrome.
So it's about changing how we view those mistakes. not as failures, but as learning experiences. Because I think that's something that a lot of people with imposter syndrome struggle with, you know? They make a mistake, and it's like their whole world comes crashing down.
It's like they take it as proof that they're not good enough.
Right, exactly.
But HETTL encourages us to see it differently. He says, okay, you messed up, but what can you learn from it? How can you grow from it?
It's almost like we need to reparent ourselves, you know? Like, give ourselves that unconditional support that we maybe didn't always get growing up.
I love that. Because it's true. It's about cultivating self-love and acceptance.
Yes.
And that's a process.
Yeah.
It takes time and effort,
Yeah.
but it's so worth it.
It is. And I think when you can finally start to silence those imposter syndrome voices, that's when you can really start to shine.
Absolutely. You're free to be your authentic self, to
Yeah.
take risks, to go after your dreams without that constant fear holding you back.
It's like you said earlier, those achievements, they become the icing on the cake, but you're already enough without them. So as we kind of wrap things up here, what's one key takeaway you would want our listeners to remember from HETTL's work?
You know, if you're listening to this and you're struggling with these feelings of self-doubt, please know you are not alone. This is so incredibly common.
It really is.
But it doesn't have to control your life.
No.
There are things you can do, steps you can take to start quieting those voices and build a stronger, more authentic sense of self.
And it's a journey, right?
Absolutely.
It's not going to happen overnight.
It takes time. Be kind to yourself along the way. Celebrate those small victories and never, ever underestimate your own incredible potential.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into imposter syndrome. It's been a fascinating conversation.
My pleasure.
And for everyone listening, thank you for being here. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.